I'm Katharina Englert, and welcome to the You Got This podcast, the podcast where we dive into career and leadership inspiration for women who are ready to take charge and lead with ease, confidence, and fun. In each episode, we explore strategies and stories designed to help you break through barriers, embrace your authentic self, and create the career you deserve. Whether it's through solo episodes packed with actionable insights or conversations with inspiring experts, this podcast is all about helping you to step up, to be seen, and to lead with impact. So, if you're ready to learn more about how to rise and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to our You Got This podcast. This week I've got a special guest with me. It's Tiankai Feng. And Tiankai and we know each other from Adidas, where we have both been working on in the bigger scheme of data, on completely different angles of data. Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
The first question I have for you, if you could maybe share your journey from a data leader to integrating creativity and music into your work, because I think most of the people on LinkedIn know you from the guy who was doing the quarantines, quarantunes.
Exactly.
Who are you?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's actually funny that you ask me about both my musician persona and my data persona, right? Because from my point of view, my music persona started much earlier actually than my data persona, right? So I started playing piano when I was 5, and then I was part of various bands in school and so on. And during my studies, I actually was working as a bar pianist to earn my money, while my studies were about marketing and information engineering. So it was a very diverse mix for me how to combine these things. And once I started my career, I worked directly in data, actually. So I worked as a data analyst for marketing data first in a small consultancy called TD Reply. Then I basically joined Adidas for 6 years, where we met, right? And I had various data roles there, including leading product data governance at my last stage there. And since more than a year now, I work at ThoughtWorks as a data strategy and data governance lead in consulting, basically, and we help our clients with bespoke solutions on data and tech stuff. But across that whole journey, right, it was always important to me to make data approachable and engaging and fun, because it is one of those topics that data people are all super passionate about, and all the business people usually are very scared of or very skeptical about, right?
Exactly.
And I wanted to really bridge that. And I noticed that my musical skills can help with that, right? So music as a language that actually everybody speaks seemed to emotionally resonate with people rather than only rationally. And by basically parodying famous pop songs from pop culture and making them data themed, I could transport basically not only a little bit of education, but joy around it. And then data has actually a different image than it would have than just a table that you send around in an Excel file, right?
So it's not storytelling, it's music selling data.
Absolutely. I mean, you could say that. It's probably a very unique way of how I do it, I noticed, that is not really reproducible from anyone else nowadays. But I really enjoy that. I feel like my creativity to be able to combine my traditional creative side in music of being a songwriter with how I want to communicate data on a professional level and bring them together, and to be able to actually make people see the impact and enjoying it. I'm really happy and lucky that it works.
I can so much relate to you when you say that business people are scared of data, because data always is like so many information, we need to update the data, and, it's not clean data, and you think
Absolutely.
there is not such a thing as dirty data. I mean, it's either correct or incorrect. You know what I mean?
Correct.
And sometimes I'm like, we need data in order to make informed decisions.
Absolutely.
Tianka, I think you have a book as well, which is called, and I'm not sure, Humanizing Data. Is this important for modern leadership or leadership in these times?
Yes. So my book is called Humanizing Data Strategy. And the reason why I wrote that book is exactly that when you look at literature around data, I would say 80% around technology, right? It's really about what kind of tools you use, how to code better, how to develop better data pipelines and all these kind of things. And very little actually focuses on how to create collaboration around data. And the thing is that all of the corporations nowadays want to call themselves data driven. And to become data driven, it implies that all of the organization has something to do with data, right? And it's not just a singular kind of responsibility of one team that should make the whole company data driven. Everyone should become data driven,
Exactly.
right? So my whole book is really about how to create that level of collaboration, right? That it shouldn't be built on just forcing people to do things and expecting them to do things, but it should be rooted in addressing people's needs and their day-to-day tasks, and to then let them feel empowered to actually deal with data in the right way. And that means understanding the audience, understanding what the day-to-day looks like, create shared goals across teams, cross-functionally, talk about data and talk about success in data in different ways as well, and let leadership role modeling it and not just expecting it from the operational people to do it. And all these kind of things are part of my book. I think it's, of course, more relevant to people that actually do work in data, because they need to then kind of establish that. But everyone who has something to do with data, I think, can learn something.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean I'm not a data analyst as you call it, but in my area it's the intersection between technology and the business.
Mm-hmm.
Data is a lot because it helps me to make informed decisions on processes, on data. And
Right.
what I find interesting is how you blend creativity in this whole approach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is this something you need to have in your life to be happy?
Wow,
The
that's a great question.
creativity part?
Yes, it is. I mean, actually, that might be the most honest I've ever been about it, but you're absolutely right. I can always talk about how me being creative and around data is helping my audience and my stakeholders. But I think you're absolutely right. I think I would only enjoy my job if I can be creative at it. And that I chose my career to be in data is a path I chose very early on in my career, right? But if I wouldn't be allowed to be creative around it, I don't think I would be satisfied by my job, right? And to be able to be creative around it and to have that level of impact that I currently have with it makes me actually very happy in my day to day. And maybe the other side of it is that data itself is not seen as the most creative discipline in business,
Ooh, not
right?
at all.
Exactly, exactly. And that means that I always have the element of surprise on my side, that nobody expects creativity to come out of data. So whenever they see anyone in data all of a sudden be creative and write music about it, it's always mind blowing, because it's just nobody has ever seen that, right? So, and I really consciously am aware of that element of surprise, and I use it consciously to drive impact, because once I have that element of surprise, I can be memorable. So I better make my message stick, right? It better be the right message that they remember from what I did. And then ideally the word can spread around it.
I like this. Is this something you would recommend others as well to use more creativity when it comes to these dry and not so pleasant and a little bulky topics? It's data, costing, finance, whatever.
Absolutely, absolutely. I even would say, right, like even just in traditional product management, you have like weekly project updates, and you always have probably one template that you always fill in, right? It doesn't always have to be that way, right? At some point, people maybe shut down; they don't really care about the updates anymore, and it becomes more of a routine and a waste of time for a lot of people, right? Just to see the same stuff over and over again. Why not start getting creative there? Change the visuals, change the colors, talk about it in a different order, use a poem to talk about it, whatever you want to do, right? As long as it still helps with the messaging and the communication of it, it cannot get really worse, right? And the other side of it, as long as you're not offensive, right? And you're stepping on anyone while being creative, there's really nothing wrong that can happen to it, right?
I like it. It's a little bit it's disruptive, changing the pattern of what's expected and then come up with something new, a new combination of something. Yeah, because like music is known, data is known, but the combination of both is like,
Exactly.
really? Does this
Unexpected.
work?
Exactly. Yeah.
Unexpected. So we talked about what makes you happy. Yeah,
Hmm.
and this was this blend. Now looking a little bit into the professional side, because that's what I'm super interested as a career and leadership coach. How would you define success for yourself? And how has this impacted in your career pathing?
That's a great question. I think my the how I defined success in my career was always some kind of impact that is changing the world for the better, which sounds really cheesy, right? But even if I think about working in marketing analytics, I, for example, always thought about, okay, I'm analyzing these data that makes you understand the customer better, which means we can plan a marketing campaign in a better way next time around. And that marketing campaign make people enjoy it more, right? They might smile about it. They might be a bigger fan about it. They might have like a more positive feeling about it. But if I could imagine a customer seeing what we help with to then basically be a little bit happier and having a better day because of it, that makes me feel really fulfilled. And nowadays, I feel like when I work in consulting, for example, which is, let's say, crass opposite in the chain of value that I generate, even just the direct contact with a client, right? And working with them on the day to day and seeing them being inspired or having a solution all of a sudden because of talking to me makes me really happy because I helped at least that one individual very directly to have a better day. But that person actually then implementing something creates a more scaled impact for the organization and then for the world as well. And that feeling of helping people very intrinsically for me and to be able to be responsible for that or contributed to that, that makes me the most happy. It's also why, I haven't even mentioned that before, I worked for a long time as a piano teacher in my studies as well. And
Really cool.
for little kids, right? Which meant I had but practice my patience a lot with little kids. But seeing them play better at the end of an hour than in the beginning, and them being happy about that they actually can play a certain part in a piece, made me really happy, right? That was the part that, like, oh man, this is really the best feeling that you can have. So I think that is really what is the whole red thread in my career. To have the impact with the people and seeing that and feeling that, that is my favorite.
Now I better understand why I had an immediate connection with you, because our values, the values we are having both are the same.
Yeah, I
Helping
can see
others,
that.
having an impact on the world. Now, this is my principle. I think if values are aligned, working relationships are easy. Any,
Totally.
collaboration is easy because you want to achieve the same. If someone is super ego driven and you have someone who's collaborative and communication driven as values, doesn't work.
That is true. It leads to continuous clashes then, right? Yeah. And we all know we all had those experiences, right?
Of course, we have.
Exactly.
I'm coaching mostly women. I mean, I
Hmm.
coach men as well, but most of the time I'm getting approached from women. I think in the data area, it's not a lot of female. What could be an unlock to either attract more female people in this area or the other way around? What could this area be in order to be, more open? What is your recommendation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, first of all, actually a big supporter of women in tech, right? And I try to do my best and play my part in either hiring decisions or supporting communities as well to drive that. But I feel like now from my interactions with the communities, it comes from both sides, right? One is that overall, there's unfortunately still a big bias, right? A lot of technological organizations, data organizations, especially in older companies, are majority men, and they have just that obvious or unobvious bias to just hire more men and not actually wanting to have women in the place. That makes it very hard. But on the other hand, I feel like women are more easily to feel that imposter syndrome too. And they by nature have less that intrinsic confidence about their skill set, but they're more careful about if they are meeting or not meeting the requirements of a job description, for example. And it's the things, right, where I see that very clearly. You have a job description that has they're always unrealistic, if we
Yeah,
know, right?
yeah.
Men are like, well, I will apply anyway, and then a lot of women are like, oh, I don't know, I feel like I probably am not meeting the requirements already. I'll probably just sit back and not apply for this one. And I'm always the one to say, no, no, please apply. Like the worst that can happen is you get rejected, but that's also fine, right? But don't even already prevent yourself from having the opportunity. And realistically, you only have to meet like 60 to 80% of the requirements anyway to actually be even considered for this, and then prove yourself in the interview process, right? So I would say, besides all of the skill set things that I can talk about, it's mindset first, right? Actually find that confidence first, and everyone can contribute to the data space so much. There's so many different jobs in data, despite how the data area looks like, that I know that everyone can find a place, and that applies to women as well, right? We need so many communicators, we need so many analytical people that also women absolutely can do, right? That we can all find our place here. So don't be less confident, too little confidence, and pull yourself back from it. Rather go towards it and try to get it.
I think that's a big and an important appeal. Is like a job description is like the ideal picture, yeah. And this is something, and the ideal candidate potentially doesn't exist. So it's really, and pulling put yourself out there, even if you're not 100% matching this one. I think this is really
Exactly.
like on the other side, companies could as well set up job ads completely differently to cater for this one, because I'm sure there is a way to overcome this one.
Absolutely.
That's something to maybe an appeal to the companies. If you want to hire women in data, in tech, maybe you consider changing your ads.
Yes, I fully agree, actually. Or, I mean, also with my experience now, where I feel like not enough women actually applied for it, but I'm sure that there were more women that actually would be suited for this position, to actually proactively reach out to those communities to spread the word around these positions, right? Because not all of them appear on the right channels. But if you particularly talk to like women in tech organizations, or we have a women in data big organization around the world as well, that has various chapters around the world, then you actually increase the opportunities for them proactively, right? And that can be really helpful too.
And that's a super advice. Talking a little bit about leadership,
Hmm.
for you, you said creativity in leadership, specifically in areas like the not wanted childs, like data. Any advice you would have for someone who's considering a leadership career in maybe focus on data?
Yeah.
Even data is too big, I'm aware of this one, yeah.
Absolutely. I think, I mean, what I learned about leadership is that the biggest challenge is finding the balance between hands-on detailed knowledge and being actually a good leader in terms of leadership skills, which means bringing people together, empowering your team members, but also making difficult decisions on behalf of the team, and also protecting them against external pressures and so on, right? All of that. But one cannot work without the other. So basically, if you want to be able to present your team in the right ways, you need to understand a little bit more in detail what they're actually doing and what they
Helps.
generate. Exactly. But on the other hand, if you're too much in the details, then you don't have actually time anymore to protect them and be the leader that they actually need. And so if you want to become a data leader, I feel like try to be more conscious about finding that balance, right? Make these choices very early on when you go into the data space to try to understand the details, but like put a stop sign at some point in front of it and say, okay, this is enough. I will need to understand another area now more, right? And build up that leadership skills that are needed actually to deal with it. The data space is such a dynamic place because technology is changing all the time. And now with the hype around AI, there's even more pressure on data nowadays, that it's impossible to just say yes to everything. Right? So being that person to be able to say no to the wrong things and to yes to the right things, and to delegate it and plan it with the team in the right way, that's super, super difficult. But that's what we need, right? So that's how I would define good data leadership nowadays, to find that balance. So keeping that in mind from the beginning when you try to enter the data space would be good.
Well, that's, I think, a good advice you're giving, because skill set for the content and leadership is completely different skill set.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we are not necessarily, when we are starting our career, we are focusing more on the content, because
Exactly.
this is the passion. That's why we choose because we do not study leadership normally. We do study a field, yeah, of expertise, yeah. And
Exactly.
then to at a moment in time, you need to decide for yourself as well, do I invest in knowing more, knowing deeper, knowing better, or do I, develop the second part, this team part, this leadership part, this managing part, communication skills.
Exactly. And I feel like, though, also, since we talk about learning, right, that with the content part and the, let's get called hard skills, right, like coding or writing queries, whatever in data, the reality is not that far away from theory as if you compare it to leadership application, right? Because you
Yeah.
can read a lot of leadership books, but you still have to live it, right? It's like, it all sounds good on paper, but when you're in the moment, you don't think of all of these things immediately. It's really a practicing thing. So it's much harder to actually become good in leadership skills, because you need to actually have applied it and lived it to step by step become a good leader. Whereas if you have learned SQL, for example, university already, you know the basics. Now in reality, data is a little bit messier, but you still apply the same code and the same language at least, right? So you just build on it. But it's not the same with these kind of communication, creativity, leadership skills, for sure.
What I find interesting as well, in the intersection now with AI coming, being more important, and all these opportunities and as well challenges we are having, I
Hmm.
think maybe there's a different aspect of leadership which comes into place. This is
Right.
sustainable, protective, and a little bit balancing leadership as well. What's your take on this one? What is, because it's a different leader in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, because the trend is going towards that we can use generative AI for all kinds of things now, right? It can help us write emails, it can help us write queries, it can help us create a storyline for a town hall, right? All of a sudden, it's able to do all of that. But not all of that is correct, right? We still in a world where there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of hallucinations by AI, which means human critical thinking and oversight is still hugely important. Someone who's able to say very quickly and very easily, this is wrong and this is right. Don't use that from AI. Let's do something else instead. And that itself is also kind of a leadership, right? To be able to distinguish in an effective and efficient manner to say we need to use AI for these things and not for these things, and to be able to tell the team, yeah, please be careful around these things. Please use this for productivity reasons. That's great. But to keep that all in mind and not let everyone run wild with doing everything with AI and in the end not knowing anymore what's happening.
Exactly. And because if you use data without thinking, there's a lot of bias in data. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then this
Exactly.
bias turns reality, and then it's even more biased. I think that's a big,
Exactly.
big danger as well. That's
Absolutely.
sometimes I find it a little threatening, but then
Hmm.
on the other side, I'm super excited as well in my role at Adidas, what we can do with data now. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
really cool. I come from the product creation side. It's a complete new world opening up.
for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Do you reckon you have kids, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
What when when I'm sure they're talking what you're doing in your professional life the whole
Yeah.
day. Would you like them to work in a similar field as you, or do you think like,
It's a great question. First of all, the funny thing is, I did ask my older son. So I have two kids, 5 and 3, and the older one understands a bit more now, of course. So I did ask him last year during the Christmas break, what does he think I do at work? And he said, so you are sitting at the computer and talk to people, then you're singing songs on the stage, and then you do something like you do something with tables, or you see a lot of numbers. That's how he described it. And it was pretty accurate, actually, what he described. It was actually very funny. So I did ask him, do you think it's fun? Would you like to do something like that? And he said, no, he would only like to do the singing part. I'm like, okay, that's fair. That's a fair reaction to it. If
I
I
think
could, I would also only do the singing part.
I think that's cool. I think that's a really cool, perspective on life.
Yeah, that is true.
Let's see how what he's doing. If he's picking up the piano or the guitar, you don't know.
Exactly. That is so true.
Like this. This
Yeah.
is really like raw and unfiltered truth.
Exactly. No, but I mean, I'm actually indifferent. I would be happy if they choose to go for the data space because I can give them guidance and I can share a lot of my knowledge with them. But I would also be very happy if they find their fulfillment in anything else, right? And we all have our own interests and our unique journeys. And I realize so importantly how you need to find something that really fulfills you and not just because it's the highest earning job or it's the one society tells you is the best one, right? Go for something that you actually like to do.
It's a little bit of this ikigai approach. You need to
Yes,
find something that
exactly.
makes you happy, not only now, but where you can think a little bit, bigger for your life.
Absolutely.
It's so funny when we talk about, what excites you. I studied my career
Hmm.
studying in this field because I like the sound of silk. I don't know if you've ever realized when you
Yes,
touch silk, it has a different touch and feel and sound. And all of a sudden,
yes.
I'm here in the intersection between technology and process. And I started with the sound of silk. Isn't this funny?
Wow, yes. So interesting though. Like because I'm sure there's some kind of touchpoint with silk, but in a very different way that you imagined, right? Now it's maybe potentially a few data points of silk that is decoded into a lot of tables. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, what's interesting from a data perspective, if you could model the drape of silk with data, because or predict the it's not possible, but that's a different story. But
Yeah.
this is the challenges we're having with 3D. How
Hmm.
can you predict the drape of a garment?
Right. Interesting.
That's where
Yeah,
data is super important in my role. So that's why I think we are connected as well. Not only we have the same values, but
exactly.
data is so cool.
Absolutely.
Tiankai, if you would need to describe, and you need to do this now, yourself in one word,
Hmm.
what is this word?
I would say uplifting is the
Up,
word I would describe myself. And the reason why is it has various implications, I think. One is positivity in there, right? But
Mhm.
uplifting also means is it's infectious and it actually impacts other people too, right? That it's not just positive for myself and everyone's annoyed by how much I laugh around me, right? But I have my positivity spreads to others too, and they feel better after talking to me too, and they feel certain drive of positivity because of interacting with me. And yeah, the whole thing of up, it's actually very interesting because my name translated, it's a Chinese name, right? If you translate it to English, it would be happy sky. So like actually
Oh,
the sky above and then being happy. And uplifting also has a way of saying going towards me, right? Because the sky is up. And basically lifting up towards the sky has a meaning with my name too. So I think that is like my perfect answer to that question.
I think that's a perfect answer to this one. Katerina means clarity, by the way, the clear, pure one. And
Also
I like
really good. Also
I like
really
this
good.
as well, and I could relate to this one, yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
Tiankai, you have written a book. Are you up to something new? Are you writing another book or a musical, an opera? What's next?
Yeah. My long term goal is to write a musical and see it come to life at some point. And
Seriously?
I do have a draft about it that I started writing when I was a teenager. And that is I'm not gonna reveal the story and everything yet because I want to keep it until it's actually becoming something potentially. But that would be my long term goal. Realistically though, especially this year, I'm not gonna do too much. Last year, I didn't even, when the year started, same time as now, I didn't even plan on writing that book yet. That only happened then towards end of January, and then I started writing and it got published, right? So I feel like opportunities kind of just come along anyway for me. So instead of planning, I'm just going to go and follow my gut feeling to say yes or no to opportunities, and let's see where it goes for me, right? So that's kind of my plan.
When people want to learn more about you, is LinkedIn the space where they find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn would be the best. And also, I have a YouTube channel with the fun music videos that we talked about as well, right? So people can check that out too. But those would be the two channels.
We will put it in the show notes so people can find you and follow you and get inspired and uplifted by you. That's
Yes,
important.
yes, perfect.
In order to close our uplifting podcast talk, and you got this, my last question would be, if you could change something in the world of work,
Hmm.
what would it be?
Yeah, great question. I would say, but it sounds much easier than it can be done. But remove the politics. It would be my very quick answer.
Politics.
Because the politics thing has so many reasons, right? There's ego in there. There's unclear objectives and responsibilities in there. Usually, there's a lack of guidance strategically as well in there. Usually, and all of that leading to very political situations that just plays around with not saying all of the information and doing things behind people's back, which I really truly hate. Right? It's one of the things I just really like being direct and constructive and solution driven, and doing things behind people's back is really my ultimate hate. So if I had a magical wand, right, I would just make it go away. Right? Let's just all work honestly and towards our common goals. Let's not play these games anymore.
I like it. Thanks so much for sharing this, and thank you for being, on my podcast. You got this, and to talk a little bit about how creativity and collaboration, which is unpolitical, shape the future of leadership. Tiankai, I hope to see you soon, and maybe I invite you already now when your musical is there. Maybe you reveal it here.
Yes, let's do it. And thanks a lot for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Take care and bye.
See you. Bye bye.
Thanks for joining me today. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an update. For more inspiration and leadership tips, follow me on LinkedIn. You'll find the link in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe so you can stay on track with every new episode. Let's continue this journey of growth together. You've got this. I'm Katharina Engelhardt, the host of the You Got This podcast.